Hello and welcome to a conversation. We are going to discuss today how to move forward or what moving forward looks like in regards to racial, ethnic reconciliation. Talking to two good friends, Charlie Foltz, who is a well-known face to many of you, and Michael Brown, who is a newer friend for me, good friend of Charlie, and has a lot to teach us. Mike, I'm wondering if you could just share with us a little bit about your restaurant, Tank's Pizza. Congratulations on what I hear the best calzone in the city. Tell us a little bit about your place, man.
So, Tank's Pizza, been in business since 2011. I pretty much love exactly what I get up and I do every day. All original, all original ingredients, all original toppings. I enjoy getting up, coming to work, being in the community, showing my face to people in the community. And making pizza.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, a lot of people enjoy you making pizza, man.
Yes,
and
sir.
I'm just going to put in a plug. If you haven't been to Tank's Pizzas, take time to go right there on New Braunfels in what's across street?
Hayes.
New Braunfels and Hayes. You won't miss it, and you won't want to miss it.
And as far as the calzones, we're different. We're a lot different from anybody in San Antonio. Customers' reviews represent that.
All
So
right.
if you come to Tank's Pizza and you haven't had a calzone or if you haven't had a good one in a while, come check us out. We'll take care of that for you.
There we go. Now, one thing that impresses me about you, Mike, is not just your pizza place or your calzone making ability, but it's also, when I heard you talking about being a father and taking pride in that, but also in your hard work as a small business owner, as compared to other possibilities you had growing up, man. Why are those things important for you? Just being a father and a husband, obviously, but also just an excellent small business owner.
So as far as being a father, man, I mean that's my absolute number one goal in life that I cannot state like the importance in. I was raised without a father. I never met my father. So at a very young age, I told myself, man, when I get older, and I have kids, I'm gonna be the best father that I could possibly be. So with that, the business ties in because that's just another aspect of showing the kids that, for one, hard work. If you work hard enough and you do what you're supposed to do and you stay, to your morals, that you can be successful in life. And with them seeing me going to work every day, enjoying what I do at work, because I think that's a huge part of owning a business or just working in period. If you have something that you have passion for and you enjoy doing, then it almost makes it to where it's not a job. I go to work every day, have fun, get to meet, wonderful people like Charlie, just being straight up that I probably would have never met,
Right.
Without owning a business. I meet so many different people that I probably would have never even had a conversation with. Just shows my kids that, man, this is something that I would like to do, or this is something that isn't out of the imagination of being able or being capable of getting done.
Man, that's phenomenal. And you are passionate about family and pizza, but you're also passionate about relationship.
Oh, for
and both of you all are passionate about this conversation, what it means for people to understand the priority of racial reconciliation, ethnic reconciliation. And why is this an important conversation for people to not only listen to, but to participate in?
I believe it's a extremely important conversation because, the status of how everything is right now. I feel like everything is so divided, in particular, like to race right at this moment, and not to say that it hasn't been, of course, in the world we live in, in past years, but I think there's just so much of a media focus on it right now, and with regular media and social media being so prominent in today's everyday, it's just highly focused on. And sometimes I believe, it's almost like targeted, to clash, like, to provide that the fuel behind that divide, when in situations that I am involved in every day, coming from, a black man's perspective, and being involved with good friends, of a few of them that I have that are white men. It doesn't have to be like that, but I think it's kind of set up in a way to where controversy sells.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So it's like added fuel to divide instead of combine.
And we can settle. We don't have to settle for that. We can move to better. And,
for sure.
And Charlie, why is it a passion for you? What would you add to what Mike said?
Well, obviously it's a hot topic right now, but it's not a new topic.
No.
Maybe new to some. If you look at the Bible, you look at Jesus. I mean, he was sitting down at a well with a Samaritan woman.
Right.
He uses the example when asked, well, who is my neighbor, the story of the Good Samaritan. So racial reconciliation has always been at the heart of God and always been at the heart of Jesus. And through conversation, especially with the Samaritan woman, he looks to initiate conversation to have transformation to occur, to have racial reconciliation to happen. And so I think that for me, as I look to follow Jesus, you would follow that example, and if it's at his heart, then for sure it should be at our heart as well. And I think it's not so much like necessarily for anybody's sake, but maybe even our own selfishly, right? Because as I've gotten closer to Mike and grown in my friendships in this community, it's I who I feel like have grown the most, and I who have learned the most. And so I think sometimes we can come in thinking, that we're in one position, but really we're truly in another. And it's those that we think that we need to help that are really put in our lives to help us. And so for me, this is such an important conversation because I have so much to grow and to learn as a white man, and just to become not so much classified as a white man any longer, but that we are classified no longer as white men or a black man, but as brothers, as brothers and sisters, as God's children, and to see the image of God in one another. I don't think that can happen unless we start to see one another through conversation, through, being in proximity and presence to one another. So I feel like it's a vital conversation just for us to experience what God has for us to experience.
One thing I appreciate about you, Charlie, in many areas is your humility and the way you articulate your need to grow and your need to learn. And then, Mike, your agreement in that. It reminds me of the danger of distance that I've heard you all talk about before, and how the distance of relationship actually hinders our understanding of the dignity of the other person. But it also takes me to what you have said about blind spots. We are not even aware of the blind spots that we have in how we see and understand people. What are things that have contributed to your blind spots that you are learning about and that you've discovered in the process of relationship with one another, and that what other people might not see in their own lives?
I think like to kind of piggyback off of what Charles just said, that like I've had to recognize and just like realize within myself, is that like I didn't trust white men. And at one point in time, and before actually getting into different relationships, which Charles is by far one of my closest relationships with a white man, I didn't know why. Like it was kind of just built in because of past relationships with my grandparents, older people in my family, whatever their experience were kind of passed down to me, through the lines, and that's just how it was supposed to be. And just being able to, for one, like have the mental capacity to say, I'm going to make this decision on my own. and I'm going to give it a try, and to realize that you can't just give one situation a try and like that's what it is for everybody, because people I've been done by my own race, just as bad as I could be done by any race. That's just the nature of man, but the blind spots I feel that have been set up are just those, just sometimes not knowing things that I've had a chance to understand better.
Absolutely.
By just giving the opportunity for it to happen.
Absolutely. And so I just appreciate your honesty. Even our families growing up will speak into and influence the level of trust that we have for people that are distant that we don't really know. And so thank you for your vulnerability in that and the courage to step out and to move through those blind spots and build trust, even after being burned at times. That's a lot of courage. I want to thank you for that. Charlie, what would you add?
Yeah, I think, we have this conversation a lot, and even if my wife Jen was here, she'd be able to share her story of how when we moved in the neighborhood, she had a fear of black men, and, we've not really figured out why that was until Mike asked her a question, which was, well, have you ever had a bad experience with a black man? And her answer was no. But through movies and media or just subtle things, we just form these stories. We sort of get this story in our mind that we're either supposed to trust and or fear, a certain type of person. And, we tend to live our lives and be in relationship with people that walk and talk like we do. Right? And so our view does not get broader, it gets more narrow. Mike could use the idea of like this tunnel vision. Like we can't see, the fullness of anything really, because again, we have a limited perspective, and that's where I think the biases and the blind spots enter in. And it's only when we start to have conversations that lead into relationships that we can truly start to identify, oh man, like, where did I get that belief actually from? Where did I get that way of seeing things from?
Yeah.
And, and I think the first step is to identify that, to have that self-awareness, but then are you willing to sort of let go? Are you willing to allow what I would say, like someone like Mike, to be my lenses so that I don't have the same biases, to be my light so that I can identify my blind spots? Do you have the vulnerability to allow someone to sort of be your guide and to help you to see the world new again?
Wow.
And that takes trust. That takes time. This isn't like a conversation that, you just sat us both down and I liked his calzone and so now, we're doing this.
He likes your shoes.
Yeah,
all right. It works out.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes time and being willing to get to those places where all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, I like you, you like me, but when happens when we disagree? What happens when we don't have the same opinion? What happens when we don't have the same perspective? How do we navigate that conversation? And then that's where you start to see one another, because you don't have to agree with one another to accept one another or to learn from one another. And so it's that ability to seek first to understand, then to be understood, to want to learn, to want to grow, to want to see the image of God in one another. And again, it's about patience, it's about persistence. But again, I think without that, we are missing the fullness of what God wants to show us, not only about the world, but about ourselves.
Wow.
And
that I want to hear it, but that is a remarkable challenge for people not only to be self-aware personally, but to really trust other people. And I think that's a beautiful invitation that has two directions that's important to highlight.
Just being all the way honest, when I first seen Charlie, I didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
I didn't think bad, but I didn't think good. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And it's because
distance perpetuates that
seriously
lack of discernment.
And because I've been burnt before.
Yeah.
I've been burnt by people who I actually thought had good intentions for me, and it was just their own. It was just their own thing. But just as I start to know him from other people in the neighborhood, because like you say, it boils down to, you can have a good reputation, you can have a bad reputation. And sometimes that doesn't even hold up because someone else's opinion of you is just their opinion. So I mean, as we got to spending a lot more time, I'd see him almost every day, if not every day. It built from there. So,
How about you, Charlie?
Yeah, I think that like for our relationship, what starts out as, us going and visiting a restaurant, it turns into a real relationship, like a friendship. It's we would go on vacation together. We would he comes to our house, like we hang out. Like it's not just about like having hard conversations. It's just about hanging out and having a conversation.
That's a huge distinction.
Yeah.
That's a huge distinction. Right.
It's not just some project that I'm like, oh, I need to go learn about black people today. It's like, it's just like
for a lot of people though,
yeah.
it feels like just a huge conversation and a project.
And maybe it starts. Maybe it is like you have to shift your mindset, or maybe it is like you have to go in with that intentionality. But ultimately, like, can you just see him as a friend? Like, it's just like, why do we get so fixated on the boxes that we must check? And I think the world wants us to a little bit. Where you're either kind of in or you're out. Even within Christianity, are you saved or you're not? Like, it's like so much like black and white, as opposed to realizing we live in a world that's very gray. And just the true like blessing of having just a friend in a conversation. So I think that's what it is. Like, for us, it's evolved into that. We're just hanging out, we're just being friends, and then you then sometimes come up against stuff. And he helps me learn, I help him learn. He takes care of me in this neighborhood, I take care of him in my neighborhood. Like, and when I'm talking about that, I'm not talking about literally.
I was going to say, this is your neighborhood, man.
Yeah, and talking about like navigating the black community versus navigating the white community.
Right.
And there's rules and ways to both, and both have positives and both have negatives. And it's how do you kind of take the good from both and create something even better. And I think that's what I think, it's like in marriage, right? You come in together and God sort of takes two and they become one, but it's a better one. And I think that's like the case in a true friendship as well. You sort of make each other better, and it kind of creates something that was, better than the individual ingredients could be by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And that takes time. And a lot of trust capital that is then spent when you all are coming up against difficulties. And I am humbled by your commitment to do that with one another. In your relationship, when did me and you become a we? How long did it take for you all to really become a we as friends?
Man, it's I don't know, like it's kind of difficult to say, because like it feels like it's like it just feels like it's always been good, like or like it feel like it's been good, so long, like as far as it has. Like I literally get up and I'm like, I know I'm going to talk to Charlie today, or honestly,
sun rises, gotta have my coffee, I'm going to talk to Charlie.
Sometimes he's like, I'll call him in the morning and he's like, hold on, Mike. It's too early for all that enthusiasm, man. Hold on. Let me catch up, man. Sometimes he'll catch me in the morning. And I was like, hey, Charlie, it's almost like, like we're looking forward to each other's conversation, to in a way kind of set the day, and it's I don't know, it's just I couldn't pinpoint an exact time when it became what it is now. Like it's just
to me
good.
that makes it more beautiful, right? Things become beautiful in their own time. You can't schedule it, program it, calculate it, plan for it. Things grow beautifully in their time, and that's a great way to articulate that.
I know it was cool, little sidebar. So Charlie comes to my family like this year was our first of many years to come. Pray to God, everything stays the same. Of us having like a family Christmas dinner, so we had it at the restaurant. So I invite Charlie. I assumed that he would come. So he comes, and just one of those blind spots, bias, whatever you would call it. My family is like, who is the white guy? You know, who is the white guy? You know, like, because I had some older family members there, and they like, baby, who is this guy? Is he lost? Is he out? I'm like, no.
You got a homeless man in here?
Yeah. I'm like, no. I'm like, that's my friend Charlie. Like,
Yeah.
that's my brother. Like, you know, they like he, you know, he good people, baby. I'm like, ain't he? He wouldn't be here if he
That's
wasn't.
right. That's
You know,
right.
like straight up. Like, you know, this is an intimate setting for our family. Like, this means something to us. This is our first one.
Absolutely.
You know, like, and that made it even more special because they're like, baby, you invited him to the first one? You know, I'm like, yeah, I invited him to the first one.
That's powerful. I mean, those are sacred family moments, holiday meals, and to invite one another into each other's space. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a great picture of we in a relationship.
Yeah, I think it is hard to look back and you try to pinpoint things. I think you can pinpoint moments where, you know, during that journey, but it's like, you know, when you go to your grandma's house and she measures you on the wall and like, well, when did you grow 3 inches? Well, I don't know. You just sort of, it just kind of happens. Like, but I think to Mike's point about the Christmas, it's those moments when I think you walk into a room and you're like, no, he's with me. And when I say a room, I think, you know, you catch my drift. Like
Yeah,
when you're invited into his space with his family, with his community, he's like, no, he's with me. And then when I invite him into my space and you know, but that's when my community and breaking down what that even really means. But it's that like, no, he's with me. And that's when it's like, you know, now it's no longer, you know, anything other than a we.
Yeah.
And I think you have to, I don't know if you can create those moments as much as God creates them, but it is that moment where you're like, no, we're together. And all of a sudden you're a we. Because you're forced to stand together in some moments. Because, you know, the world will want to divide you. The world will ultimately want to try to turn you against one another. And, you know, those little lies that the devil will tell. And it's like, no. This isn't us. This is a brother thing. This is a friend thing. This is a we thing, you know?
Well, and I appreciate the authenticity of that, but I also like the paradigm that you use of moving towards solidarity, right? And learning from and with one another. We're hesitant to do that with other people in general, just because we're prideful. What do you say to people who need some encouragement in moving towards relationship and not just learning from, but learning with people over that long term, allowing that process to gradually become a we?
Yeah. So yeah, that is the thing that we talk about. You go about, you learn about someone, right? Like I can learn about Mike, or whoever's watching this is going to learn about Mike, that he's the owner of a restaurant, or
And they got to
you know,
try his calzones.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, let's get with the
It's
program.
serious,
But to learning kind of from someone, right? Like you can kind of enter into this relationship, and you can kind of learn from someone. I think there's, you know, more value in that. And you kind of go from this idea of being a stranger as you kind of come into a student, you know. But ultimately, I think true unity, true transformation comes when you learn with someone. There's this give and take. There's this sort of, hey, I'm gonna lead here. No, I'm gonna let you lead there. It's this true like I think picture of Jesus of being able to submit and honor and just, you know, allow someone to lead and guide, and so that solidarity where you go from not just the sort of about is okay. You got to start somewhere where you're this, you know, first you're strangers, but then to become students where you're learning from one another, but ultimately to be able to learn with. I mean, that just is a beautiful thing that I think if you embrace the journey, but I think it's where true learning really actually happens, where it's not just taught but experienced, and it's that like act of experiencing life together that is truly transformational, and like to your point, using the word, it's like sacred. So
And you know, so cool too, like, and like this is a 100% fact. Like there are people in this neighborhood who would see Charlie all the time and just didn't know what to think about, just didn't know how to approach him, kind of hesitant to approach him. And then they see me and him in constant, like, you know, talking, laughing, relationship, I'm introducing him, So people just, to a certain extent, like got comfortable to the point to where they would come and ask me like, hey, like, man, is your guy okay? And I'm like, yeah, man, he's just a regular, he's just a regular guy, man. He's super cool, man. I go into the extent of our relationship. So now those people have opened up to him, and he has other relationships. Don't you ever leave me. He got other relationships with people who, probably wouldn't even have opened up to him,
But isn't that what we need? I mean, we
without a
need to
doubt.
expand the network to share the trust capital that we build in relationships, where we're learning with other people, so that we can break the artificial boundaries that are imposed upon us, whether it's ethnic, racial, socioeconomic, or other, and really close the distance, move towards one another, so that we can restore dignity in God's design. And that's a powerful picture of sharing the capital. Yeah, thank you for that. And what would you say to people who just don't care? And I know you don't have time to bother with them, but there's a whole group of folks that it's just not a priority for them at all. What would you say to them? I'm pricking the prophet.
I think at a certain level, like if you catch me on the right day, I'm going to be pretty opinionated. Most days you might get me pretty opinionated, but I think that ultimately, like as you ask that question right now, I think I have a little bit of a sadness for them, like in genuine, like man, like if you're just stuck in that place, like there's kind of a sadness for me for that. The rich young ruler comes and approaches Jesus, and he's like, hey, like you have one thing left to do. It's like sell all that you have and give to the poor. And I'm not prescribing that necessarily, but what I'm saying is like we hold on to these things. We hold on to these positions that we have and these beliefs that we hold so true. And it just prevents us. It just limits our ability to truly experience what I would believe is a kingdom life. And so, if there's this hardness of heart and there's just like this, I am who I am, or it just is what it is, I think that I would have a sadness, for that, because there's so much more to be gained and experienced as we lean into others that maybe don't look like us, maybe don't talk like us, maybe don't walk like us. It gives you, I think, a new lease on life and a new step in the journey to take. So
that's a beautiful invitation. It reminds me of C.S. Lewis has a book of essays called The Weight of Glory, and the essay that is carries the title of the book, Weight of Glory. He uses a paradigm of a child who builds mud pies in a slum when he doesn't understand that a holiday at the beach is offered. And we become content in our circumstances, not knowing that we could build sandcastles on a beautiful beach. And the promises, the fullness of life that God has for us, and celebrating the diversity of his design is not only a benefit to our society, but a blessing to ourselves personally. And I appreciate your heart in saying that's very, very invitational.
I feel like in this journey of just getting out of the comfort zone that I was always raised in, like I'm enjoying the ride. And it has nothing to do, because most people try to associate, things with financial benefits or social wealth, stuff like that. No, man, it's just like I got a friend. It's hard for me. I don't have many people who I call friends. I associate people with their association with me in my life, doing business, whatever it is. I hold that title like with the utmost of respect because I've been through a lot of bad friendships. I have very few good ones. So the ones that I do have, I cherish them. So I think that's my take on that.
It really is an invitation to whoever who might hear this or might listen. This is an invitation into, I think something better that God has for each of us individually. That when we do describe the body, it is made up of many parts, and there is this fullness, I think, that only comes when we all come together as one, when we embrace diversity and to create unity, not just strive for uniformity, where you must walk and talk a certain way, we must embrace the fact that God has created us all in his image. And whether this is a black-white issue, a male-female issue, a rich-poor issue, whatever has been created to divide us, there is this need for us to come together. And for me personally, if we can't do that in the church, man, like, we got some issues, because that's what we preach. One body, one spirit, one God, and we are just as divided as anything that you would look at in the world. And so, when a Christian, if you listen to the way they talk, might sound different, but do they look different in the way that they walk? And if you're
now you're meddling, doctor.
Yeah, so I'll be careful. But but in that, it's just like, hey, let us learn to walk again, to walk together, to take that journey, to take that invitation to Jesus would say, hey, come and follow me. Like, hey, I know that there's a lot of unknowns. I know that there's maybe a lot of fears that you might have, or pride that you're kind of holding you back. But like, hey, like, just trust me. Like, let's go on this journey. I promise you that you will find life. And so I think that it is in this moment that this is far more than just a white guy and a black guy figuring out how to talk or to be buddies. There is so much to be gained and learned, and that God has for us in unlikely relationships. And so that we would seek out those that we may not normally be friends with, because I think that that's where we can find the most friendship, probably, that are always looking for anyway.
That's a good word. That's a real good word. And I want to thank you all for taking time to answer these questions and to vulnerably share your own journey and invite other people into this journey. And if you're wondering where to take the first step, let me give you a couple of places you can look. First, Tank's Pizza. Come meet Mike and eat one of his calzones, or as I've been learning from you all, I was grateful to be able to be a part of an immersion right here through SA Heals in O2. And I want to encourage you to contact Charlie or Jen at SA Heals and discern what that next step is for you, just to learn with and to learn from, to learn together and to walk forward towards better. And so I just want to thank you all very, very much for this time.
No problem at all.
Appreciate the opportunity, brother.
Absolutely.
Yes,